If you go to Paris and you don't go see Notre Dame, you've kind of missed the heart of the city. It was at first, of course, horror and shock. You worry about the people that are in there. And then you're thinking about this is kind of the heart of the city. I mean, it is in the center of the city on the Ile de la Cité, and the emotions that the people of France must feel to see it, as probably I would feel if my church caught on fire. It's a very ancient church. The foundation, the cornerstone was laid in 1163 by Pope Louis VII and by Pope Alexander III and King Louis VII, and it was a new style. The style of churches at that time was a Romanesque, a Roman style. And so this is the beginning of Gothic, with these very, very tall churches to really provoke your heart to transcend, to go up. But the architecture, to build it that tall, you build much thinner walls to build it. The roof sits on top of that, and the problem that the architects noticed is that the weight of the roof started pushing the walls out. So what you see at Notre Dame is these large flying buttresses that support the rather thin wall for the size of the church from pushing out by the roof pushing down. And the concern that I have, just knowing a little bit about church architecture, is now that that roof is gone, are those buttresses going to start pushing the walls, which are no longer supporting the roof? And I'm sure the architects in Paris are following, paying attention to that. You know, you could go back to the history of the beginning of the church fire, the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. We've had them all over town, and it is always one of the perils. And in truth, you know, these buildings were meant to support a fire, okay? The stonemasons knew the roof, in a sense, I mean, not to get rid of the tragedy, but it was made to last without the roof. And the roof was something that constantly had to be repaired, because the stone will last for a long time, but the wood doesn't. What they used to do with these old cathedrals is they'd start building it, and they knew in France it was going to take 100 years to build it. So at the time you started building, you started planting trees. And by the time those trees had grown 100 years, now it was time for the roof to go on. And in fact, the last time they put a roof on there, they planted trees, which are now ready to be placed up on top, like 50 acres of these huge trees. It is a tragedy, but you know, we constantly rebuild. As this cathedral has seen worse time, Notre Dame, I mean, what was worse, it was dedicated to the cult of reason after the French Revolution, and was not a church anymore. But the church will come back stronger. And at St. Paul outside the walls, one of the greatest churches in Rome, was burned down. A massive outpouring of generosity from all over the world to rebuild that church. And I think that's what's going to happen at Notre Dame de Paris.